That's 1 billion damage without the Holy Bolt Elixir. And this video is everything you need to know about Summoner Necromancer. How to do these high bursts, attack speed buckets, because there's a lot of confusion, and everything that kind of scales your minions. Let's begin with attack speed while Jeffrey's just pummeling away there. You get minion attack speed bonus, your personal one, and then you have your aspect attack speed. Now there's a lot of talk about two attack speed buckets. Your personal that can be 100% and the minion one that can be 100%. Forget about all of this. You need to have a total of 100% attack speed in order for the Core Leader node to give you that 150% multiplier. Now there's a very important thing though about your personal attack speed and why you should boost that over just relying on Frenzied Death to scale as high as possible. The very simple reason why your personal attack speed should be higher is because it boosts your actual skills. So if you're using Race Skeleton, for example, with 2 attack speed rings, he just way faster goes up to these 5 stacks for the Flesh Eater node. And Flesh Eater is needed for the 40% multiplier, one of the steps for the billion damage hits and beyond. This also goes for the Blight version of the build or the Corpse Explosion version of the build. And here an interesting part about Corpse Explosion, it gets twice the attack speed. So if I have 50% attack speed boost here right now for myself, the Corpse Explosion actually gets 100% attack speed and just happens way faster. You're going like brrr, machine gun corpse explosions. Now, an interesting part about boosting your own attack speed this much. Currently, I got 16.6 and 16.6 for my rings, so a 32.9 plus the 10% minion attack speed, which brings me to a 43%. Together with a Frenzied Death, I'm almost at 90%. If I now pick up attack speed gloves or an attack speed amulet, I would be able to completely attack speed out to the maximum of 100%, without having to do the attack speed tempering on my weapon, which means you could have your Skeletal mages cast twice instead of bonus attack speed, or you could try to get so much attack speed from the tempering that you could essentially forego the frenzied aspect. Now that being said, you can go over the 100%. It doesn't hurt anyone. If you get even more attack speed, your minions simply attack faster and have more damage per second. Now let's talk about the rotation for the billion damage hits. What do you need to do? Well, step 1 is you need to stack up the Shadowblight key passive. As you can see, this happens relatively quick right now because I have Shadow Mages and I'm using the Aphotic aspect to turn my Skeletal Warriors into Shadow as well, which then stacks up this aspect incredibly fast without even having to go for my Blood Misted Corpse Explosion, which would stack it up even faster. This would now mean a 240% damage multiplier. And this 240% damage multiplier essentially also, well, multiplies everything up into the critical strike damage. So you have like these super crits happening. That is also why you want a relative high critical strike chance that when you're actually hitting the golem button, he would be doing boom, as much damage as possible. Now this is only step 1, right? You need to get this stacked up. At the same time, and that's where your bonus attack speed comes into play, you need to get 5 corpses consumed. So every time you see the 10 stacked up, you also want to have the 5 stacked up. The good thing is that the 5 stacks can be like super quick summon, right? So this is halfway through, bop, 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 we have the 5ers. That's already 240% and then another 40% multiplier acting up together. And as soon as you see the 10 hit, that's usually your time to go for Army of the Dead. So we're going to have like this stack up, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, Army of the Dead, and then Golem. And then you're going to try to reduce the Golem cooldown as much as possible, do it again. And that's where the super hits are coming from. This obviously only goes if you're playing Unyielding Commander for the bonus attack damage. Now let's assume you have an aspect slot left open. What does actually increase the Golem's damage? We're going to be hitting here for like his 4.5 million hits going away, not having the maximum attack speed because we haven't tempered this weapon yet. And obviously the main thing that influences is Golem damage, then the maximum damage of your weapon, because this is a sword with 4,412. A scythe that has 4,903 would allow him to do more max total damage because your base weapon damage multiplies by everything, multiplied by the critical strike damage bonus is then higher. Now my Golem was doing 4.5 million hits before. We have, for example, the aspect of the Inner Calm where I'm just standing still. And then after 3 seconds, we get a bonus triple damage. That does have him just deal 6.5 million hits instead of the maximum of 5.5 million that he has been doing before. So he can hit higher with this. The main thing this one actually increases is not necessarily your Golem super bangs. It does also increase the ability damage of the golem. That when you're then doing this, and that was just 38 million, that is increased by this 30% as well. There would be another one, the aspect of elements. Gain 30% increased damage to a set of damage types for 7 seconds. So I'm going to put the gloves on, and then I'm going to have for 7 seconds fire, lightning, and physical damage. And the golem does do physical damage, so his actual hits do more damage. And then when we do the ability, that does more damage as well. Then it flips to shadow damage, and essentially my mages and we would do more damage as well. Now the problem with intercom is that you deal 10% increased damage, which is good. It's just a flat 10% damage increase, and it triples after you stand still for 3 seconds. But that's the thing, you need to stand still for 1, 2, 3, and as soon as you move, it's only 10. Only 10, only 10, only 10. Which is okay, because maybe you're going to be doing the blood mist, 1, 2, 3. Then you come out of blood mist and you instantly have the damage boost of 30%. So you can set this up very nicely, as we know that we're waiting for the 10 stacks of the Shadowblight key passive to then get the maximum bonus. In case you're playing Temerity, which grants you Barrier on Overheal, that can be very fantastic. Or even the Bone Storm build with Barium. There would be the Conceited aspect, which is a little bit better because that's just a 25% damage increase while Barrier is active, and that just kind of always works because you always have one barrier. Because that's the thing. If you have one barrier, it's 25% bonus damage. If you have 1,000 barrier, it's still 20, but at least one, you're good to go. Interestingly enough, the aspect of the Damned, which gives you 50% multiplicative shadow damage to enemies afflicted by any curse, does actually not work for your shadow mages. I did try that, and it was kind of sad. Now to the bigger question though, is the hulking aspect worth it? Your golem has a 12% chance to reduce its active cooldown by 2 seconds and a 6% chance to spawn a corpse each time it damages an enemy with its normal attack. The corpse spawning not so important, but then again, when you're fighting a boss and you randomly can make corpses, that's not too bad, right? Because every corpse you make is then a potential skeletal priest summon, or if you're playing with corpse explosion, it's just more corpses for corpse explosion. It can even be the initial corpse that you need for the corpse tendrils. And before you ask, no, the aspect of the grasping veins is only giving our lats the bonus critical strike chance, but not the bonus critical strike damage. Sad face. If that would be fixed, the golem could do even more damage. Now let's use the ability. And the cooldown just got reduced once. There was 1 or 2 during the whole duration. Let's do it again. Cooldown reductions through his hits, which obviously now comes back to the point, if you're having more than 100%, that was 1 cooldown reduction. So on average, 1 cooldown reduction happening. If you have more attack speed in total right now, then obviously there's a bigger chance that you would get another cooldown reduction. Now he didn't get a single cooldown reduction during the whole duration. So 12% is not a lot. Now we have multiple targets. We're going to have him use his ability, and then he's starting to slam this guy, and he hits both, right? There's a bigger chance now that he essentially cooldown reduces, as you can see, because he's hitting more targets, right? So against a boss fight, maybe not so good. But if you're dungeon pushing and corpse tendrils everything together, and then he goes, and starts hitting like 4 or 5 targets at the same time, not bad. The most important part for scaling though is your rings and the golem active cooldown reduction, because that can be 30%, 32.5 to be honest, and that's not even fully tempered. Now we're looking at the cooldown being 10.2 seconds and your golem just being your maximum damage. Without any of the multipliers happening, he essentially has the opportunity to do 21, 41, 42 million damage already. And that's without anything multiplying, right? Without us trying to get like here our Shadowblight key passive stacked up and what's so not, and then boom, just having like 62 million suddenly with a first 40% multiplier. That's where you 100% want the golem active cooldown reduction. It's a must. Now to the Paragon board. Do you really need the Frenzied Golem, the 25% bonus damage, the 50% bonus damage? And the answer is simply yes, because every single point of damage multiplies upwards. But what about this interesting note? 5% bonus damage while golems are active. This gives me more damage while golems are active, but shouldn't this plus 20% bonus damage inevitably go back onto my golem? But if we're looking right now, this is 3 million, 4 million, 4.1, 4.4, 1.5, 1.6. So we're hitting like for some million damages, some 3 millions, right? he's too, like, you get it averaged out, correct? This is like roughly what we're dealing. Now we could take away the 20% damage and the 5% damage. That's quite a lot. Let's join these points out. And our golem should instantly do less damage because that weighs down on him as well. So that was a 3.9, 4.3, 1.7, 3, 4, 3. I feel like I see more 2 millions than I see 3 millions at this point, because we still have some 3 millions, right? The 4.1, 4.4, 3.5, 3.5, 3.7, 3.9, 2.8. Hard to say if the node, now, like, we put the 25% back on, right? There's still 2.7, 2.4. As you can see, somewhat complicated to figure out, does this actually now profit or not? End of the day, it's the 6% total armor while golems are active that I truly want to just easily reach my armor caps without having to worry about any gear. Now, what about your skeletal mages? Should we take the bonus firing bolt or the 15% bonus damage? The answer is, that depends. All right, a 15% bonus damage as we summon the mages essentially straight up profits our golem. I mean, suddenly we're at 7 million hits, right? That's 15% bonus. And also the 15% bonus when he actually uses his ability, that one does more damage as well. Now, the thing is, if you have the 15% bonus damage, you notice this stacks up relatively slow, right? Because the Shadowblight key passive reads, shadow damage infects enemies with Shadowblight. Every 10th time an enemy receives damage, they get a Shadowblight explosion. And the Shadowblight explosion needs to happen 10 times, right? So our 5 minions have to each attack twice to get one stack going, and then they need to essentially do this 10 times. That's why it's happening relatively slow with this. But hey, it's 15% bonus damage, which is a lot. Now, how much faster is it though with this one? Let's go for the double attacks, kill them all, resummon the lads, there they are. And if you're looking at this right now, stacks up quite faster. I wouldn't say twice as fast because obviously it's only every third attack and not every second attack, but it is faster. Now there's a thing that we can do though, and that is we're currently playing the aphotic aspect. Skeletal Priest, empower your warriors to deal shadow damage. Now let's sacrifice the mages and only get the warriors out. So we're getting our Reapers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6. Nothing's happening right now, right? No Shadowblight key passive stacking, nothing. They do attack super fast though. I mean, Reapers are plenty fast attacking. Now we do use aphotic for the bonus shadow damage. Suddenly you can see they're actually stacking almost as fast up as our mages, right? I mean, that's just the Reapers, just during duration of the raised skeletons. So you're gonna make sure that this bar that's running down here, by the way, that's the bar, that is always full, because then you're consistently getting the shadow stacks. Now we're doing it together with the mages. We're gonna go first for the 3% mages, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the 3% mages now. I'm gonna activate it. And that is plenty quick for a boss fight, right? I mean, it's the duration gone, and now let's keep it activated that we have this. And we're gonna count very simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 seconds roughly. Say 8 seconds maybe to get this activated. And as we're swapping now over to the Shadow Skeleton Mages with a third attack. Let's get them up. Wait for the stacks to be completely through that we can actually do our counting. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Maybe 6. Didn't really feel much faster with the double casting, right? Because we are like, there's only that many hits that can be going down seemingly. This one was faster now. It was definitely down to 5. But we're talking about like a reduction of maybe 2 seconds for the loss of 15% bonus damage. That's what the bonus damage seems for my eyes to be coming out on top. Now keep in mind that that's not the only things we're having, because we're having the Shadow Mages right now. And then on top of this, we actually do our Corpse Explosions. And now if we add the Corpse Explosions to this with the mages and everything and the aphotic aspect and the guys going away, right? Wait for our Corpse Explosion to be there. We're going to do aphotic, then start the Corpse Explosions. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the fastest you're essentially having it. But now if we're talking about 4 or 2 seconds, I think it's more opportune to have the consistent going on of that 15% bonus damage. because the 15% bonus damage is also working then together with a 240%, right? So we're actually having the 240 x the 15. Whereas if you don't have the x15 at all, we might be saving on these 2 seconds. But the most damage we're getting anyways, if we have the 5 running, the 10 running, the 15%, and then we trigger the Golem and we suddenly get the billions of hits. Boom, plus the cooldown reduction that the Reapers are fueling in. Now to the tempering confusion. What's the best? Summoning damage, Skeletal mage damage, Golem damage. Summoning damage increases everything that has a summoning tag. So summoning, and yes, your Army of the Dead is a summoning skill as well. So if you're taking summoning damage, you would boost everything here. And one could say that 11 minions, or 12 in total, times the summoning damage, would net total come out more than actually having your Golem only be boosted. The reason to mainly go for Golem damage is because he multiplies more. So this is another 100% increased damage. And that's 150% increased damage. Our skeletons are only receiving this. That's it, right? And there might be 11 that get this 150%. But we get the one dude that gets the 150, that 150 times another 100%. And then we have on top of that the Golem Glyph 2, which gives another 25% multiplier. The Golem simply has way too many multipliers, just making him go completely crazy. Now, all of this being said, end of the day, if we only temper summoning damage, we should probably net total end up in the somewhat same DPS, maybe even higher. This is quite hard to test because this stupid target dummy does not have a DPS meter. Blizzard, we need a DPS meter to kind of test these things. Paragon board wise, your minions profit from everything. Enemies affected by curse skills take 10% increased damage from you and your minions. It says in there. But also the darkness glyph. For every 5 intelligence purchased within range, you deal shadow damage increase. And that shadow damage increase would higher the damage of my skeletal mages as well. And it would give me a 10% damage reduction. That being said, the 10% damage reduction doesn't seem to be that much worth it as we're mostly spending our time in Blood Mist. And I do see the question a lot about the control glyph. Why are you not playing the control glyph? Is it really worth it? While you're pushing the dungeon, so you're trying to go through to the boss, it would be worth it because that is a 20% multiplier against crowd control enemies, and you either slow or you stun them continuously, crowd control. That being said, against bosses, it wouldn't work. Only if the boss is staggered, and you don't have him staggered all the time. And there's the simple question. Do you want a 20% multiplier as he's staggered? Or do you want a consistent 10% multiplier going on, like with Scorch, that would increase your damage by 10% for shadow damage over time affected enemies? Or Amplify, which is a 10% multiplier from curse affected enemies, and your curse is always on them. And this happens all the time, not only when staggered. And lastly, one little thing to think about when you're playing Blood Mist. You could be going for Ghastly Blood Mist, leaves behind a corpse every 1 second, which can be quite nice for engagement. But if my Reapers are making corpses and my Golem is making corpses, and we have this corpse explosion then going on corpses, but we have enough production, you could be going for the Dreadful Blood Mist. You gain a 10% critical strike chance for 4 seconds after Blood Mist ends. More crit is more crit on my minions is more damage. It is an option that you could consider. Now, want to see the Golem blast away in a Pit 110 without the Holy Bolt Elixir? There you go. Or if you're rather interested in playing Bone Spirit, which does crit for 250 million and beyond, well, there's another build for you. Enjoy. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you here.